Oh, geez, Flesh, that's a really sticky topic. You're going to get yelled at on Twitter. No, it's not. No topic is risky if you know the depths of darkness in your own heart, unless they don't match up with the person you're pretending to be. But I've got nothing to hide, so I'm just going to dive in. Now, why would you want to hear a white man's opinion on this? I don't know. You clicked on the video. Now, all joking aside, this is a topic suggested by a buddy of mine that I figured I'd tackle because it's something that is at once insidious within people who think they're helping, but also something that should be talked about, but isn't, for reasons that I will get into momentarily. Being unable or afraid to speak plainly and bluntly about race is a self-report that you fall into one of two categories. Or actually, sometimes both, honestly. Category 1, crypto-Nazis. These are people who are awkward about the topic of race because they looked inwards and what they found was, bro, I straight up just do not like Mexicans. Or whatever. And they decided to just sort of keep that quiet. Now, this is a very real issue, but not really the point of the video. Category 2, however, progressives who are self-reporting as exclusively hanging out with white people, or at the very least not interacting with people of other races in close or casual enough settings to speak freely about race with them. Now, if you are a white person who is slightly nervous right now that you're going to get in trouble just from hearing me say this, or, if you view the idea of race with a combination of, awe and fear, rather than like what you look like, what disease you get, what natural environment you're most suited to, congratulations, this is you. This is who I'm talking about. Where does the queer community fit into this? Well, there's a lot of stuff at play here, and this is only a very loosely structured video, so I'm going to kind of just rattle off some observations. There's a mistaken sense of, we're on the same side, we're both oppressed, from the queer community that is largely unreciprocated from minority communities. There's a strong kind of all of it or nothing social pressure on the white progressive queer left. You can't pick and choose. All of it or nothing, all of it or nothing. Now, as such, it's incomprehensible to them that many minority communities are in many ways frequently more socially conservative. How could you be misogynistic? Don't you realize you're black? Or whatever? The progressive queer community has a hard time squaring the circle between their intersectional worldview and, at least in many places, disproportionately experiencing homophobia from non-white communities. When the queer community says, I hate men, they mean black and brown men. When they mean white men, they say white men. Now, the inability to speak candidly about the issue leads to a complete lack of analysis as to the underlying cause amongst most people. First and foremost being that acceptance of LGBTQ people is kind of like a luxury belief. And, if you disagree, look at literally any country in the world throughout all of recorded history. It's not exactly, controversial to say that. Many of the identities and struggles of the more, liberal arts student end of the LGBTQ community, demisexuals, whatever, the Tumblr stuff that people make fun of, can seem indulgent to people who, grew up without a father due to 90s era mandatory minimum sentencing for drug possession and subsequent felon disenfranchisement. I think there's a certain resentment for people equating being queer with the oppression faced by ethnic minorities. We didn't have hundreds of years of homosexual slavery in the U.S. If you knew where to look, we did. Now, a good example of this sort of disconnect is something I saw recently. I saw a distraught post from a, well-meaning but clueless DNC person who just simply could not understand why Pete Buttigieg was polling at 0% with black voters, despite how progressive his platform is comparatively. And even after 50 different black people showed up and went bro, of course he's polling at 0%, he is a gay white guy. He kept going, no, it's not that. Expecting people of other cultural backgrounds to share the exact same values as college-educated, liberal, coastal white people, and then having a meltdown when they don't is kind of an interesting choice. Think about it this way. So would you consider it a form of systemic racism, how in the 80s, everything in media and culture was from the perspective of a center-right, Reagan-era, upper-middle-class white person? You are still doing that. You're just doing libtard white supremacy instead of chud white supremacy now. It is understandably not very popular with many groups. While I'm talking about this, actually, here's another thing that bothers me. So, have you ever noticed how certain types of people, let's just say their Subaru has a Middlebury alumni sticker next to their Middlebury faculty lot sticker, try and collect acquaintances of obscure ethnicities, kind of like Pokemon? This is my Papua New Guinean friend. I had to transfer her over from the PAL version. It's like the people who think it's racist to play ethno-guesser, forcing a friendship with someone so that they can show off their exotic specimen. It's weird to do that. Anyways, I'm gonna end with something tangentially related, which is Flesh Simulator's individual racial oppression formula. It's the derivative with respect to upward class mobility of the generational racial stigma, raised to the number of generations divided by class mobility multiplied by the difference between a 100th percentile household income and your parents' income.